right, everyone, let's begin your reading. Before we dive into today's message, I want to remind you to check your moon sign, your rising sign, and your midheaven readings as well. Very often, those readings contain complementary messages that help complete the picture of what's happening in your life. We've already posted another reading for your sign today, so make sure to watch that one later as well, because every reading captures a different layer of the energy surrounding you. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, don't forget to do so, because we're constantly updating these readings as the energies continue to evolve. Now let's find out what this person's true intentions are toward you. As always, remember that this is a general reading. It won't resonate with every single person watching. So only keep what genuinely fits your situation and leave the rest behind. The very first thing that immediately catches my attention is the appearance of the King of Cups together with the Queen of Cups. This is an incredibly beautiful combination. And before we even begin interpreting it, remember that the cards are not speaking about gender. This could represent two men, two women, a man and a woman, or any type of romantic connection. The important message isn't the gender of the people involved. It's the emotional compatibility represented by these two cards. The first thing these cards tell me is very simple. This person's feelings for you are genuine. I don't see confusion. I don't see emotional games. I don't see someone pretending to care. I see someone who has genuinely fallen in love with you. And that is exactly why this reading feels so calm. Interestingly, I don't see the complicated energy that often appears in many relationship readings. I don't see emotional distance. I don't see prolonged silence. I don't see someone intentionally pushing you away. If your current situation is filled with ghosting, constant arguments, complete separation, or months without communication, this reading may simply not be describing your story today. Instead, I see two people whose connection has developed naturally. The energy feels peaceful, comfortable, safe. There is something about this connection that simply feels right, almost as though neither of you needed to force anything. Sometimes we meet people who make every interaction feel difficult. Every conversation becomes complicated. Every misunderstanding grows into a major conflict. But these cards carry the exact opposite feeling. They suggest that when this person met you, something inside them immediately felt familiar. Not necessarily because they believed in love at first sight, but because they experienced a level of emotional comfort they hadn't felt in a very long time. There is a beautiful expression that immediately comes to mind when looking at these cards. I finally found my missing piece. Or as some people like to say, I finally found the lid to my pot. That is exactly how this person seems to feel. There is an incredible sense of emotional compatibility here. Not because the two of you are identical, but because your differences seem to complement each other rather than create conflict. One person's strengths naturally support the other person's weaknesses. One person's calm balances the other's anxiety. One person's confidence encourages the other's doubts. There is harmony between your emotional energies. And I believe this surprised this person more than it surprised you. Because one of the strongest things I notice is that they didn't expect to meet someone like you. In fact, I almost feel that before meeting you, this person had already become comfortable with the idea of remaining single for a while. Perhaps they had experienced disappointments in previous relationships. Perhaps they had become emotionally independent. Perhaps they had convinced themselves that life was simpler without sharing it with someone else. Sometimes people spend so much time protecting themselves that they genuinely stop looking for love. Not because they stop believing in it, but because they stop expecting it. And I feel that this person had reached exactly that point. They had built a peaceful life for themselves. They had learned to enjoy their own company. They had accepted that maybe relationships simply weren't meant to be their priority anymore. Then you appeared, and everything they believed about their emotional future suddenly became uncertain. Not in a negative way, in the most beautiful way possible, because meeting you forced them to ask themselves questions they hadn't asked in a very long time. What if I'm actually ready for this? What if I don't want to be alone anymore? What if this person is different from everyone I've met before? Those questions seem to have surprised them. The interesting part is that they didn't immediately act on those feelings. The cards suggest they became quieter instead, more reflective, more observant. Some of you may even have noticed moments when this person seemed slightly different after getting to know you better. Perhaps they became more thoughtful. Perhaps they occasionally seemed distracted. Perhaps they took a little longer to express certain emotions. That wasn't because their feelings were disappearing. It was because they were trying to understand them. This person appears emotionally mature enough to know that strong attraction alone isn't enough to build a lasting relationship. So instead of rushing into declarations, they step back internally, not away from you, but into themselves. They wanted to know whether these feelings were temporary, whether this was simply excitement, whether this was infatuation, or whether they had genuinely found someone capable of changing the direction of their life. The more time passed, the clearer the answer became. These feelings didn't disappear. They became stronger. Instead of fading, they deepened. Instead of becoming ordinary, they became more meaningful. And that realization seems to have changed everything. Because once this person accepted what they truly felt, they also began imagining a future differently. Before you, their future probably involved only themselves. After meeting you, their future naturally began including another person. That shift is enormous, because it isn't simply about romance. It's about allowing someone else to occupy a place in their life that had remained empty for a very long time. I also feel that this person deeply admires who you are. Not only your appearance, not only your personality, but the way you make them feel. There is a tremendous emotional safety surrounding this connection. They don't feel they have to pretend. They don't feel they have to perform. They don't feel they have to become someone else just to earn your affection. Instead, they feel accepted. They feel understood. They feel emotionally comfortable. And that is surprisingly rare. Many relationships are built upon attraction. Some are built upon excitement. Others are built upon chemistry. But these cards suggest something much deeper. This relationship seems to be built upon emotional peace. That is why I continue seeing the King and Queen of Cups together, because both cards speak the same emotional language. Neither one needs to force the connection. Neither one needs to convince the other to stay. Neither one needs to play emotional games. Everything flows much more naturally than either of you probably expected. And because of that, the true intention of this person becomes very clear. Their intention isn't simply to continue talking. It isn't simply to continue dating. It isn't simply to enjoy your company for a while. Their intention is to make this relationship work. They genuinely want to see where this connection can lead. Not because they feel pressured, not because they feel lonely, but because perhaps for the first time in a very long time, they genuinely believe they have met someone with whom building a future actually feels possible. As I continue looking at these cards, I become even more convinced that this person has been emotionally transformed by meeting you. This doesn't feel like someone who simply developed a crush. It feels much deeper than that. It feels like someone whose perspective on love has quietly changed over time because of your presence. One thing that stands out immediately is that this person never seems to have viewed this relationship as something casual. Even during the early stages, while they were still trying to understand their own emotions, there was already a part of them wondering what this connection could eventually become. That is very different from someone who enters a relationship only looking for excitement or temporary companionship. This person appears to think long term. Perhaps they didn't express that immediately. Perhaps they even hid it from themselves for a while. But internally, those thoughts were already beginning to develop. The King and Queen of Cups continue emphasizing emotional balance. When these two cards appear together, they often suggest two people who naturally understand one another without constantly needing explanations. You may have noticed that conversations with this person feel easy, comfortable, natural. There isn't much pressure to impress each other. There isn't a constant fear of saying the wrong thing. Instead, everything seems to flow. Even moments of silence may feel peaceful rather than uncomfortable. That emotional comfort is something this person values tremendously, because I honestly don't feel they've experienced that very often in previous relationships. Perhaps in the past they constantly had to explain themselves. Perhaps previous relationships involved misunderstandings, arguments, emotional instability, mixed signals, or people who never truly understood who they were. Meeting you seems to have introduced them to an entirely different experience, one where they feel emotionally safe. And emotional safety can become incredibly addictive in the healthiest possible way. Because once someone experiences genuine peace inside a relationship, they rarely want to return to emotional chaos. I also notice that this person seems fascinated by the way you handle emotions. Perhaps you remain calm during situations where other people would panic. Perhaps you're naturally compassionate. Perhaps you listen before judging. Perhaps you simply create an environment where people feel accepted. Whatever it is, they admire it deeply, not only because it benefits them, but because it inspires them. I actually feel that you've unintentionally helped this person grow emotionally, simply by being yourself, simply by showing consistency, simply by treating them with sincerity. Without even realizing it, you've shown them that relationships don't always have to involve uncertainty. They don't always have to involve emotional games. They don't always have to involve fear. That realization alone has become incredibly meaningful for them. Another interesting detail is that I don't feel this person is idealizing you. They're not ignoring your imperfections. They know you're human. They know you have flaws. They know you have difficult days. And strangely enough, that makes them appreciate you even more. Because what they admire isn't perfection, it's authenticity. They feel that what they see is genuine, that they don't have to constantly question your intentions, that they know where they stand with you. That level of emotional transparency creates tremendous trust. The cards also suggest that this person has been imagining small moments involving the two of you. Not necessarily dramatic life events. Sometimes people imagine weddings, grand declarations, or huge milestones. Interestingly, I see something much simpler. They imagine ordinary life, having dinner together, talking after work, sharing routines, traveling together, laughing over small moments, supporting one another through difficult days. Those simple images tell me far more than any grand romantic gesture ever could. Because when someone begins imagining everyday life with another person, they're no longer thinking only about romance. They're thinking about partnership. They're thinking about building a life. They're thinking about permanence. That seems to be exactly where this person's heart is leading them. I also noticed that they have become much more emotionally open since meeting you. Perhaps they were once extremely private. Perhaps they rarely expressed vulnerability. Perhaps they kept most of their feelings to themselves. But little by little, you seem to have made them feel comfortable enough to lower those emotional walls. Not because you demanded it, not because you pressured them, simply because they gradually realized they could trust you. Trust appears repeatedly throughout this reading, and that's significant because many relationships begin with attraction, but very few develop deep trust so naturally. This connection seems to have done exactly that. Another beautiful aspect of these cards is the absence of manipulation. I don't see emotional games. I don't see someone trying to make you jealous. I don't see someone trying to control you. I don't see someone testing your feelings unnecessarily. Instead, I see emotional maturity, respect, patience, a genuine desire to build something healthy rather than something dramatic. That may actually be one of the reasons this relationship feels different from others you've experienced. Sometimes healthy love feels unfamiliar simply because it lacks unnecessary complications. People become so accustomed to emotional ups and downs that stability almost feels unusual. But stability is exactly what these cards continue emphasizing. I also believe this person pays close attention to the little things you probably don't even notice. The way you speak, the way you laugh, the way you care about other people, the way you react when someone needs help, the way you remain yourself regardless of who's around. Those details have quietly become some of their favorite things about you. Not because they're extraordinary to everyone else, but because they're uniquely yours. Sometimes love grows through grand moments. Sometimes it grows through thousands of tiny observations that slowly convince someone they don't want to lose the person standing in front of them. That seems to be exactly what happened here. Little by little, conversation after conversation, moment after moment, this person's feelings became impossible to ignore, and now they seem completely certain about what they want. Their true intention is not temporary. It isn't experimental. It isn't uncertain. Their intention is to continue building this relationship, to continue discovering who you are, to continue allowing you to discover who they are, and ultimately to see how far this connection can naturally grow. Because from everything these cards continue showing me, this person isn't searching for something casual anymore. They believe they have finally met someone worth investing their heart in. Someone who makes love feel peaceful instead of complicated. Someone who makes commitment feel exciting instead of frightening. Someone who makes the future seem brighter simply because they're part of it. And that may be the clearest answer these cards could possibly give regarding this person's true intentions. And if you enjoyed this reading, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the latest energy readings for your zodiac sign.